Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for a very special screening of Álex de la Iglesia's smash horror comedy, The Day of the Beast, now restored in 4K from the original negative by Severin Films. Tonight's collaboration is between Outside the Box Office at USC, Severin Films, and Fangoria's Colors of the Dark podcast. We're joined tonight by our fearless hosts, Dr. Rebekah McKendry and Elric Kane, who are the hosts of Fangoria's Colors of the Dark podcast. We're also joined by David Gregory, the founder of Severin Films, along with his colleague Andrew Furtado. And we're gonna run the whole film tonight, The Day of the Beast, which runs about an hour and 44 minutes here directly in the webinar. And then we'll chat about it. We'll set it up, we'll run the film, and then we'll be back for a discussion afterwards, and you can ask all of your questions. So let's welcome everyone up. Hey guys.
Hey, how is it going?
Is Andrew joining us, or did I just sort of like totally?
I saw.
There he is.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Hey,
I didn't want to intrude. I was just coming to support, baby.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here, Andrew.
Good to see you, Andrew. Well, I am so excited to show this because this one is rarely seen. I mean, like when I first, and I even brought the book out so that I could show it. I first heard about Day of the Beast in this old Fangoria book, and this is like long before I worked there. This is like years before I worked there. They put this out, I want to say in like 96, 97. And I remember getting this while I was in high school and just working my way through every single one of the titles. And it became like a checklist to see them all. And Day of the Beast was always super, super hard to see. And I couldn't find it. And I ended up seeing Accion Mutante, which is his first film instead. So I saw that one first, and it was still years before I was able to see Day of the Beast. So yeah, Elric, when did you first see it?
I think I was about 20, 21, and I started on VHS, and I was really into Spanish cinema, still am into, post 75, post Franco Spanish cinema. Besides that, you got Buñuel. And it was just a random stumbling. I hadn't actually heard his name. There's a chance I might have already seen Perdita, because that's the first time I saw Perdita pretty early, because in New Zealand they got a pretty normal release, unlike here. And I was so shocked by that film that when I went back to Day of the Beast, I almost couldn't believe it was the same director. It was such, even though you can tell now if you look at them, it's like I didn't actually realize that Álex was a comic book artist, but now it makes complete sense with Day of the Beast. Like it feels like, I mean, I don't know how that guy hasn't been snapped up by DC especially. I feel like he would be the perfect director for that kind of universe, the darkness and the humor. He has a feel for it. But I thought it was fantastic, and I haven't seen it since. I was thinking about seeing it a few years ago, and I'm so glad I didn't rewatch it, because tonight I get to see it looking, David Gregory gorgeous.
You just made me smile at an Álex de la Iglesia like Marvel movie.
DC.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he's
DC,
right for Marvel.
DC,
He's right for
okay.
DC.
I think everything Álex does is a little too wrong, on the side of wrong to be mainstream. But I don't know. 30 Coins is his new HBO show, and that's about as mainstream as it gets. So
yeah, it's still pretty subversive.
It's very for Álex as well. Anyone who's watched 30 Coins, it's like it's very much the same guy who made Day of the Beast.
And it still feels very transgressive. It still feels very kind of, he's always got this edge where he's very both accepting and critical of the Catholic Church simultaneously, as we will see tonight. And that is part of it as well. But David, when did you first encounter Álex?
Day of the Beast was the first film of his that I saw. I did not see Accion Mutante when it first came out. And Accion Mutante, funnily enough, was produced by Almodovar and actually is a more expensive movie than Day of the Beast. Álex wanted Almodovar. He presented Day of the Beast to Almodovar, and he was like, it's a little too edgy and fucking blasphemous for me to put the name on. So basically,
hard to believe given where he would take.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Almodovar was the Spanish John Waters at the time.
Yeah.
But basically, when Day of the Beast came out, he went ahead and made that with a lot less budget than he made Accion Mutante. So his second movie was actually cheaper than his first.
What was
And
his role for if you know what, because people always call him a protege of Almodovar. What was he doing for him? Was he helping storyboard, or was he like an assistant director, or do you not know if he
I
really worked
actually
with?
don't know. I just know
Okay,
that he was the financier of Action
interesting.
Mutant.
I
Maybe
know that
he
he
worked on a
worked a
couple.
lot as a production designer before he got into directing. He did production design a good bit.
Interesting, yeah.
Andrew, what is the story about Alex getting the money through a short film? Because we have the short film on the
cool.
UHD of Day of the Beast.
Yeah. So basically, to build a rapport, because he was not very well known at the time, he created a festival where his film was the only submission, and it was a film that was specifically made around a soda drink, and the whole film festival was soda based. So he started telling everybody he has this award-winning short film. Here it is. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this is crazy. I don't know what it is, but it won an award, so he must be good."
That's great.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah.
So Day of the
Fake it till
Beast.
you make it.
Well, so why was Day of the Beast so hard to find here in the States? Like, do you guys have any intel on why it was just never got a decent release here?
You know, I actually don't know with Day of the Beast. With Perdita Durango, I think it's because it was designed to be a much more mainstream film than it ended up being. But if you watch it, it's like there's no way we can release this to the mainstream in the US. Whereas Day of the Beast actually had a fairly decent, you know, for a foreign language film, release at the time. But I think it was, I forget the name of the company that released it. Was it Vidmark that released it? But basically they went out of business. So essentially the rights ultimately reverted back to the producer. And so that's how we were able to get it and restore it and remaster it and all that business.
Wow. Now, on the upcoming Blu-ray release, did you actually get to interview Álex about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Álex is so we're doing both Day of the Beast and Perdita Durango on UHD and Blu-ray, and Álex, who is the busiest man in cinema as far as I can tell, yeah, and but yes, he's obviously very proud of these movies. The guy has not stopped working since.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it seems like we were working on these films for what, 3 years, Andrew, because they're so difficult to remaster and color, and there were the specifics involved in getting the negatives and all that kind of thing. Seems like Álex was always making a new movie. Every time we were like, can we talk to Álex about something or other? And sure enough, like just recently, you know, a major magazine wanted to put him on the cover, and they were like, sorry, Álex is just about to go into production on his new movie. You know, so I think he's made 2 movies and an HBO miniseries since we started on these.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This was the first film to use big budget special effects in Spain. So keep that in mind when you see those shots. They didn't know what they were doing. They're very, very early stages of that kind of stuff. And when you see it, just seeing his vision of what he thought would work and just seeing it done, like, yeah, that was a journey. And like he was saying, 3 years, and to finally hold these in my hands,
yeah,
and call this project like
done
out there in the world, it feels better than like any other project I've worked on.
I finally have my Perdita Durango in. I
Oh
finally
my
have it
goodness.
on my jacket, because I'm like, it's done. We finally got it done. And
Those are beautiful, and great. Oh my gosh. Well, I have been so, and I'm always so amused about Alex's kind of his variety, because I assume that you guys have seen some of his other stuff, like Oxford Murders and Baby's Room are both these like quiet little slow burn. I mean, like Baby's Room is scary, but it's in more of like a Grudge style scary, than it is like the big giant set pieces and, you know, sacrilegious that he usually covers in his stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned that in some list that you were doing of something or other, and when you did that, I asked to find out if that was available, but sadly it's owned by Lionsgate, which means that it's
shit. Yeah, that one
untouchable. You know,
honestly, it's one of my favorite ones of his movies, and it's completely different from everything else. It feels very much like a product of like the art dread Japanese remakes that we were doing here in the States in the early 2000s, where the whole thing is set inside of one house and centers around a ghost that they can only see through the baby monitor. So it's real tiny, real small, but just has some phenomenal scares that you don't usually see come from him. Like he's known for these giant set pieces and just kind of jaw-dropping content.
Or even we've been talking on the show occasionally about 30 Coins, how even the opening credits feel like a self-contained Alex de Iglesia movie because it has all the beats and the high points and the sacrilegious. It's really quite something. I'm a few episodes behind now because once it started, I was in it. And then
wait till you get to the end.
Yeah, if you stop watching TV for a minute, you fall out of it. You know,
without spoiling it, like the art direction in the last episode,
Okay, cool.
the production design in the last episode is some of the most jaw-dropping stuff you will ever see.
Oh yeah,
it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's not one of those shows I've lost interest in, unlike most of TV. But it's more just like you miss it 1 week. But I think I got about 4 to go. But I love the priest, the actor who plays the priest. He strikes me as someone who would have been a regular for him, but I'm not sure if he is. He just has that face. He looks like he belongs to that world. So
he does.
Yeah.
So what was kind of, just because I know you know your Euro horror, like what was the vibe when this came out in the mid 90s? Were horror comedies big? Because the only other Spanish horror film that I know from around this time is Thesis. I think was maybe the prior year. But were horror comedies doing well in Europe at the time period, or was this just kind of pure Alex?
You know, I think the fact that it was that it came out of the post Almodovar Spain was helpful, even though it's way more confrontationally blasphemous and tasteless and all those kinds of things. It was like it was something that got a wider audience than a movie like this might have done. So at the time, it was actually a pretty well watched foreign film. So and it just kind of disappeared after that.
Yeah. Looking at the chat, somebody just mentioned one that I have not seen, which I just discovered a couple days ago, which is 800 Bullets.
Yes.
I have never seen this. I am so excited to hunt it down now.
Spaghetti Western, yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. The thing I love about Alex's films is each film feels like his first breakout hit because he goes so hard. Even with 30 Coins, the dude's like been going for longer than I've been alive, and he is still just as fresh and just as perfectly on point with what he's doing. So
we'll talk about it a little more after, but I think that is really apt for a certain Spanish director who lived a very long life and never once didn't keep boxing the man, which is Buñuel. Buñuel, people always forget he's a Spanish director because he had to flee Spain to make movies in Mexico and France. But he did end up coming back even under Franco and made one that was actually basically a trick punch. I think Verdinia, right? Is him trying to make one for Franco, but subverting Franco as he's there. And he's one of the only ones who got away with that. And
I think there's a certain other Franco who did that too.
Oh yes, that's right. Another one you should know well, right?
Yes.
If you're a Severin fan,
that
Franco.
would be the Jess one.
But Buñuel was doing it on such a big level, so I think there's some similarities there because even down to his last movie, it's completely sacrilege. I mean, he's just.
Well, I think there were only two filmmakers that were condemned by the Catholic Church in the 70s, and one was Buñuel and the other was Jess Franco.
Yeah, which makes sense.
That's shocking because we watched a Spanish film completely apart from Alex de Iglesia. Elric and I just watched. What was it? Not Day. Satan's Blood.
Yeah, but that's post Franco. So
that's post Franco.
After 75, I actually didn't know the term. We'll talk about it more afterwards. But the term, I had studied a bit about this because there's a film I've just loved for years, and I've actually tried to ask David multiple times about, which is called Arabato.
Yeah.
But that's a guy who was like basically pals with Almodovar, and he was the guy who designed the posters for Almodovar films. But this period, I didn't realize it actually had a name. The post Franco period is called the Movida period, and it's basically where it just goes totally. It's like a bacchanal basically in Spain.
Yeah.
Film, sex, drugs, especially heroin, and a lot of people became heroin addicts. AIDS epidemic was plugging through a lot of these directors. A number of them died of AIDS, and it just was a complete.
Yeah, Eloy de la Iglesia, no relation to Alex, was also a major director of what you're talking about as well. But if you look at Almodovar's early films, I mean, they were very much embracing the fact that finally drugs, we can get drugs and break the law without being, executed.
So
Yeah, no,
was
it's
a big
like a
deal.
gasp of cinema all of a sudden. So again, it's just interesting. So it seems like he's one more generation after that
Yeah,
is Alex de Iglesias, but he benefits from some of that freedom, I'd say.
definitely.
But just as rigorous is great.
Well, shall we jump in?
Let's do it.
Excellent. We will see you all on the other side. Please enjoy this movie. There is so much wrong with it, but just so much that is absolutely wonderful. So I love this one.
So welcome back, guys. I'm going to start vetting questions, so you guys feel free to just take it away, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I don't know how we can follow that. It was so fun. I have not had the opportunity to see this in several years, and it was just a fantastic rewatch. I literally laughed out loud and did a spit take the moment that she leaned in and she was like, "He's an artist," and he said, "Fuck you," and then she elbowed him. Literally, like I had no recollection of that, and I laughed out loud from it, and then had to text Elric to tell him that I just laughed out loud.
I was laughing at the exact same moment. It's funny because we were just on our Patreon show talking about Black Roses, and
Mhm.
it's like this is Black Roses if Black Roses had a great director. You know, like there's a lot of similarities in terms of the ideas, but Black Roses doesn't have like some great kind of auteurist director behind it. But this really does. Like the beat to beat of the gags. I kind of feel bad because there's about 20 people who didn't stay past maybe 20 minutes, and I'm thinking like the first 20 minutes is really kind of a comedy, and it's very Spanish in that Almodovar tone almost, and then once the gags start, they never let up, which is so much fun to watch. Yeah, that was a blast.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up about the heavy metal influences, which we can definitely talk about. I do not know what specific bands these are. This is 1995, so this would have been right at the peak of the industrial metal, which I was huge in. Like that was definitely my jam in the 90s. So like Ministry, Pigface, KMFDM, anything like that would have kind of been in this vein. Metal has basically always been a part of Alex de la Iglesias' film. Even if you look back to his one, Witch and Ambition from a couple of years ago, had a really tight metal soundtrack to it. He's used a lot in 30 Coins. So it's definitely been something, even Last Circus, it's not a metal score, but it sounds metal. It's got kind of the same fast moving drum paces to it. So there's definitely a lot that he is pulling from the metal world here.
I like the person who's mentioning how good-hearted it was. I think that's one of the things that's utterly charming. Reminds me also a bit like a bit of early Peter Jackson. Like I think these two have something in common in terms of, especially with Dead Alive, Brain Dead. You know, it's such a good-hearted romance at the core of that movie that everything else can go utterly batshit. And in this movie, I was really sad when the heavy metaler dies at the end. I'm like, no, he's like, I love these guys. You want to see them all in a sequel, just on the road doing something.
Yeah, that is something that's so hard to capture. And I saw a question pop up about, what directors kind of have this same sensibility of them. I definitely think Peter Jackson is one of them because it is that absolute explosion of just pure batshittery mixed with what is at the end of the day like a good message. I would also say, I'm probably going to say the last name wrong, but Nishimura, who did like Tokyo Gore Police and a lot of the films like that. It is just this utter insanity combined with this pure heart message. And you have to kind of go through chaos to get to that point.
Yeah, and I think Sam Raimi as well a little bit. Like especially, I think they all have that thing in common where they could do something insane, like somebody could lose their hand or kill their mother or blow their girlfriend away with a shotgun, and you'd still be on their side because there's a sweetness to the characters, which is I don't know. That part I did remember, and it was really refreshing to see it again because it's the other one I'd say is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I think of as two sweet characters at the core of utter carnage.
Yeah. No, this one, and I mean, one of the laughs that I remembered the most was when the guy is dying and they bring him in to do last rites, and then he leans down and was like, "I hope you rot in hell." And that for me is this or even just pushing the mime over, which he uses those mimes again in Witching and Bitching. You see kind of those same setups, and that for me is pure Alex de la Iglesia. The idea of just kind of the banality of Christianity just being blown up into this exact opposite of insanity.
And what I like about the gags is they keep one. I especially think the sequence where he goes to get the virgin's blood, that entire sequence just keeps getting better and better. And once the mother comes in and blows off his ear, and then he kicks her down the stairs, like each thing is escalating. That's where you kind of get the feeling, okay, this guy's a great craftsman, and I want to see more of this. But I think those visual gags are lacking in horror, comic gags. You know, I think maybe the phase we're in now, which is obviously the more A24 and slower burn, more realistic, grounded horror, is very, very far away from this kind of tone. So it's fun to see it.
Yeah, that is such a shame right now, but we just are not in a time period where horror comedy is selling. And even probably last year, I remember, I can't even remember what context it was in, but I was talking to someone and they were making reference to the film Deathgasm, which has a similar sensibility to it, where it is the heavy metal horror, the two Satanist guys, and ultimately trying to achieve good through it. And they have to go through a lot of batshit bonkersness to get there. But whoever it was referencing actual like box office numbers and Netflix numbers and how it performed on Amazon. And it just wasn't there. And it was just as an example of like, horror comedies were just not selling right now. They're a really hard sell. And a lot of what people are saying now is the reason for that is that humor tends to be nationalized. Like what we find funny in the States may not be the same as Japan, may not be the same as Germany, which I tend to disagree with. I mean, I thought one of the funniest films last year was One Cut of the Dead. And obviously the humor still.
This is what happens when robots start deciding what we are going to enjoy with our lives. But I'm sure it's also to do with streaming, because comedy, it's a different experience. This film, with even the way we just watch this now, it's not quite at the level as it would have been in a cinema together, right? Like this kind of a tone, we would have all had that gag at the exact moment. And I think maybe when they know something's just being made directly for Netflix, it just maybe isn't what people are pushing play on, which is, you know, I don't want that to be the future of everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, David, any thoughts on like releasing the horror comedy now? I mean, as it's something that, I mean, it's, of course, it's still going to sell great for Severin, I would think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's when we announced it, it was actually quite a while ago when we first announced that we had them, and they took a long time to actually get to the release stage. But the response to it's been huge, just because both this and Perdita Durango have been out of circulation for so long. Mm-hmm. So it's actually quite encouraging. And I had no idea that 30 Coins was actually happening, as I said before the film, that, you know, he's made 2 features and 30 Coins since we actually started this. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think for our audience, this is like a huge movie for us. So you know, the response has been great. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
And you know, at this point, nobody's actually seen the disc, so that remains to be seen. But you know, we've packed them full of extras, and hopefully it'll get the response that we want. I was actually just reminded after the movie started, though, the first time that I actually the only time I met Álex, I actually was in Aix-en-Provence in France, visiting the studio of Cézanne, which is like a small house in Aix-en-Provence, and this dude speaking Spanish with a beard with a Fangoria t-shirt walked in, and I was like,
yes,
Álex de la Iglesia.
Wow.
And he was like, yes, I am Álex.
Now I have to send him a new shirt.
Yeah.
I have to send him a new shirt now. That is fantastic.
Yeah. So that was just after Day of the Beast. So yeah.
Oh my God.
What can we expect on the extras?
Well, Álex is in it, is in the extras, and obviously the main priest guy is no longer with us, but we have Flavio, who was the DP on this, and Perdita Durango, he's on there, and I mean, we have several different interviews with the various people who made the movie, and they all obviously have like great memories of this, because it was a phenomenon when it came out in Spain. I mean, it was Diego LF from the Sitges Film Festival did an entire feature-length documentary about how this was the new wave of Spanish horror, And so there's a feature-length documentary on the disc about how important Day of the Beast was to Spanish cinema.
Now, it was nominated for like 6 or 7 Goyas,
Yeah.
right? That's like the
Yeah.
Spanish equivalent of the Oscars, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it
I mean, yeah,
won
that
a
just
bunch
tells
of
you
them.
what a different culture it is in Spain. I mean, the Goyas, they gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Jess Franco. So I mean, it's a very different world over there that they.
I wish we would give a Lifetime Achievement Award to Jess Franco.
Yeah,
Like,
or
we
even
need to.
you know, well, I mean, I guess they gave one to Roger Corman eventually, but not in the actual show. It was like, you know, when the consolation awards where they do it at a different situation, but
that's how Lynch got his too.
In the actual show, you know.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
50 people away.
Yeah, it's crazy that some of these major artists that have impact, like especially Corman. Corman's hired most of the guys who went on to win Oscars. You know, Jonathan Demme winning everything for Silence of the Lambs. It all comes back to Corman. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so Day of the Beast was a huge hit in Spain, and also was nominated. I think it may have even won a bunch of Goyas, but it was certainly nominated.
I know Andrew talked a little bit up at the top about the effects and how this was kind of one of the first big effect movies. What does Álex say about it on the disc? Because I still have to say, the moment when the goat walks into that room, like it is chilling.
It is, and what's interesting is that scene is in standard definition. They did it as a digital effect in standard definition. So we're like, this is a major drop in quality on the UHD. But the fact is, it is like you say, it's a stunning moment in the film where the goat actually stands up. And so, you know, you can kind of get away with it, but we're like, where's the film elements on this? Well, it was actually done on beta. You know, it was never actually done as something that could be high definition. So it will only ever be that good. But
wow,
I still think it's a pretty impressive effect for what it is.
And even at the end with the demon at the end, the kind of skinless goat is such a fascinating effect. And even though that, you know, you can see the seams of it now, it still has a lot of kind of chilling qualities to it.
Yeah. No, I mean, clearly Álex knew what he was doing, even as a young man. I mean, the fact that now he's still so prolific. I mean, the guy is absolute visionary.
Definitely. And actually, I saw a question that was a read-only question from David Richards that says, if I loved this and 30 coins, what Álex de Iglesia should I seek out next? And that's a damn good question. I feel like Last Supper is definitely in the same vein of these two movies. Perdita Durango is by far his most extreme. And I always am very selective about who I recommend Perdita Durango to, just because I know how extreme it is. But then if you loved this movie and you want to push it even further, Perdita Durango is it. It is the same humor.
Who are you showing Perdita Durango to? How dare you?
No, like a lot of times, especially because I recommend films to students constantly. Like it's always kind of like, is the student going to treasure this and get it? Not even get it. Like, is it going to be like, you know, they have to understand kind of the situational in which this was being made in? Because I mean, that movie has like 4 rapes in it. One of them done by Rosie Perez. Like there's a lot going on in that movie. And so, you know,
it definitely pushes the envelope. And I think that's why it's so badass. Honestly, the film is like utterly shameless.
And I think one of Javier Bardem's best performances. Like,
oh my God, he's
like
great in it.
It's a real launching point for him in America.
It is, and neither he nor Rosie Perez would participate in the disc, and it's a shame because both of them are so amazing.
Rosie is the fire in that film.
Absolutely, Rosie Perez is incredible, and you know, I can't think of another role that she has where she is just so dominating. And Javier Bardem, I think Barry Gifford, who wrote all the Sailor and Lula books, he was like, you could tell Javier Bardem was going to become a movie star. Like he definitely such a presence, you know, on the set of Perdita Durango.
And like there's moments in Perdita Durango where he's funny and then he's brutal and then
Terrifying, yeah.
he's just vicious and terrifying. And
No,
his
he makes
dancing-
his character in No Country for Old Men is a sweetheart compared to Perdita Durango.
Yeah. No, so it always gets like a choice recommendation. I actually speak on the disc about my weird fascination with this film. So it's definitely one that I have a place in my soul for, and I kind of feel dirty about that.
Well, yeah, because when you watch it, you're like, why wasn't this film bigger? And then the more it goes on, you're like, yeah, I can see why this didn't hit the mainstream.
Yeah.
No, it definitely breaks a lot of rules.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll put it on the IMAX, but we won't promote it. It'll be word of mouth.
Yeah, I mean, it should be on the IMAX. It's a stunning looking movie.
It's gorgeous. Just to see like James Gandolfini get hit by a car like 5 times, and he keeps standing up.
Gandolfini also really good in that movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's always
Screaming Jay Hawkins is in it. Also really good in the movie.
Really good.
I heard he was rather intoxicated on various substances for most of the filming of it, but still really good in the movie.
And also Alex Cox, the director of Repo Man, is hilarious in the film.
So yeah, it should have been a big box office hit, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it would have been a box office hit had they toned it down, but it would not be the film it is if they'd have toned it down.
Definitely. So do we want to, I see a bunch of raised hands. Do we want to do some live questions?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, grab 1 or 2 of the read-only questions and I'll start transferring people over.
How do you tell which one's read-only? I saw
They
some
say
that
read,
were-
please.
Oh.
Yeah, I've the ones at the top for sure.
Somebody asked about Christmas, non-conventional Christmas movies where it's like a backdrop. It's not the story in terms of tone, and a not good Christmas movie at all. It's not good at all, but it really felt like it would pair with this for me is when we talked about not that long ago, which is Elves, because there's something about the plot of Elves, which is a nasty, stupid, there's Nazis trying to make a pure bloodline, but the way Christmas is in the background of that one, I think that would actually be quite a fun.
Oh my God. I
double
can't
Find
thing.
Elves. I went looking for this after hearing you talk about it.
Elves is
Yeah.
not available, and
It's only on VHS.
Yeah, but you can go to David's house and watch it. And
You
he
can
has an
probably-
Elves room.
I'm sure you can find Elves on YouTube as well. It is literally the
It's
weirdest,
just nasty and weird.
most, yeah, it's got oh gosh, what's his name? Dan, I can't remember his name.
The big
now.
lumberjack.
I still credit
Haggerty, Dan Haggerty.
Dan Haggerty, thank you.
Yeah.
I still credit Elves as the reason I quit smoking like 10, 15 years ago, because he chain smokes through the entire movie to the point where by the time I was done watching it, I was like, I don't really want to smoke anymore. And I have specific memories of watching it because I lived on the 5th floor of a New York City walk up. And I was like trying to quit anyway because it sucked to have to walk down 5 flights of stairs and back up to have a cigarette. And then after seeing this, I was like, I think it's time to quit. So whatever, Elves is basically like the nicotine patch of bad Christmas movies.
Clearly, it's an important film if it had that effect. So that's my official pairing. I'm not going anywhere else. That's it.
Well, we tried to release it in time for Christmas, but the film wasn't done in time. So
Have you investigated Elves and why we cannot?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. There's a long story as to why Elves is not available.
I must hear that at some point.
There was also one about Pan's Labyrinth and why, and I actually did read something about it. It's not a very good answer, but it was about why Pan's Labyrinth and this both have kind of the fantasy elements. And it does seem post-Franco that a lot of Spanish cinema did kind of couch trauma and some of these ideas in fantasy genre. Maybe it's a little easier to deal with certain topics and make them palpable, because I think one of the problems, the historical subgenre can be a real turnoff for a lot of people. So by couching it within going back to like an art house film like Spirit of the Beehive, which uses that same approach really well, using Frankenstein as a kind of symbol.
Or even Del Toro's other film before that, Devil's Backbone, is the same. It's this kind of historical thing, but it's all kind of wrapped up in what is perceived as like a child's fairy tale with this almost kind of gothic ghost in it.
So I did bring Patrick over. Patrick, if you want to jump in follow up to that, or
do you want to just tell us who you're bringing? We'll shut up. So otherwise we'll keep repeating the same ones.
I mean, yeah, no, Patrick, I see you're on our side of the panel. If you want to pop on your video, or at least your mic.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry guys. This is my first time doing a Zoom. You know, I'm still getting the hang of this. Basically, what I mentioned before was I just wanted to share that I thought it was an interesting coincidence between both this film and Pan's Labyrinth, not just because Alex Angulo was in both films, but I thought it was interesting how towards the end gradually there's this ambiguity with regards to what's real and what is fantasy that I thought was interesting, you know, parallel, like especially as things get crazier. And also, yeah, it's just something to think about. It's not necessarily a question per se. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty common though. I think you're onto something, and I think in Spanish cinema, Spanish horror cinema, you know, obviously there's been a pretty decent boom period post '90s of different movies, and a lot of them have that element. You know, Rec is a little different. The Rec series is a lot more grounded and using found footage in kind of a realistic approach. But it's pretty common throughout. I mean, I know Guillermo del Toro is not a Spanish filmmaker, but you know, Pan's Labyrinth is set in Spain. So,
and even if you look at something like The Orphanage, which is much more contemporary, it still has that kind of fairy tale-ish quality to it, where it is this very kind of historical story wrapped inside of the fairy tale.
Yeah, no, I think it works well to get to these things that are actually very serious in their past. It just seems much more accessible, and maybe that plays into the question that was early on about international audiences. That's another way to also make an international audience watch a movie about something versus just, you know, something about the Franco regime, which is like a complete, to be honest, over a lot of people's heads. Like, we don't know a lot about that period because we haven't been taught it in schools very much. So, and
the technique of kind of using the fairy tale as a way to get an audience in. It's not even just Spain. I mean, we saw that in Tigers Are Not Afraid last year, and it was a beautiful vehicle to get us into a really fascinating horror film and socioeconomic look at a very specific area.
And this year, Le Llorona is done the same thing and nominated for an Oscar. So, you know,
shortlisted, but
shortlisted.
Oh, nominated for a Golden Globe this weekend. So
yeah.
So what's that matter?
Okay, we also have Carlos out here. Carlos, if you want to join us, you're welcome to turn on your video. You got to unmute. Hello.
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Sorry, I'm in this dark void here.
You're in the further. It's cool.
I just want to say this is great. It's just great to talk about Alex de la Iglesia because I'm such a huge fan of his, and you know, even other people that I know that are, you know, film nerds or whatever you want to call. There's not a lot of people who are familiar with him, which always shocks me because, you know, you watch this movie and it's so incredible. It's so, you know, I mean, this is from what, 95, 96?
95.
And you could put this out in a theater now. I think it would hold up with anything that contemporary. His vision is so wicked and so consistent. Like, it's just amazing. And
I wonder if it's an aversion to not having a dubbed version or something. Like if it's a subtitle version.
Funnily enough, we do have the dubbed version on the disc.
How is it?
Well, it's not the default. You should not be watching it dubbed. Yeah. But it was released on VHS dubbed in the US, so we were remiss not to include it.
Yikes.
Yeah, me and Becca were just watching, we were just saying at the start, Satan's Blood, which is coming out, I think, Vinegar Syndrome, and she was watching it in the English, and I started in that, and then I switched to the subtitles, and it was like a totally different movie. And I think it's the difference between Italian and Spanish film. The Italians knew how to dub, and that was a big part of their culture, as we saw. They're really good at it. And then the Spanish films, I don't know, maybe they just weren't, because it felt very poorly recorded.
It depends on the
qualify.
budget. It's basically, you know, a lot of Italian films have terrible dubbing. It's basically how much you're going to spend on the dubbing's not cheap.
Yeah.
You know, but basically the cheapest way you can do it is to get one person in to do several characters, and so that's how a lot of the cheapest dubbing was done. You know, the classic examples are in the kung fu movies. They would have several people doing, you know, every.
There's like no presence at all in the room, right? It's just the microphone and the person. Yes.
And I will qualify my watching the Satan's Blood dubbed version was because the lead actress was being dubbed by the same voice as Olga's dub from Suspiria. And I love her voice.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
It was well worth it for that. So. But Carlos, you'd asked a question about the music at the ending, right?
Yeah, I was just curious watching it, and I always love how Alex de la Iglesia's films always end with the characters battered and bloody and just like, you know, I just finished watching 30 Coins and it was the same way. Everybody just gets, you know, totally put through the ringer.
Yeah.
No
and
spoilers.
there's this, I mean, there's that insane scene of, you know, these guys, you know, the Clean Madrid guys going to kill them and the devil and whatnot. And then, you know, we kind of have a little break with the replacement host, but then the movie ends with this like, boom, 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 like very like comic. It sounds like a very like traditional movie theme. And I was just wondering if that was actually a reference to something, you know, to older films or something from Alex, because it seems so out of character with the rest of, you know, the music in the film and sort of what's going on. But then it just ends on this real like goofy note, like.
Yeah, it almost ends with like a sitcom feel of like these two guys who have been through shit now just kind of walking off into the world.
They've saved the world.
Yeah. And just kind of walking off into it now while still bickering to a degree. And it did have kind of like this sitcom-y soundtrack that kicked in. For me, that was either like playing up the feel-good ending of it or kind of capping it on an almost comedic note. And then the heavy metal kicked back in. But most of his films do end with like that crazy heavy metal soundtrack, like Witchin' and Bitchin'. I think he had The Exploited play the entire time over the credits. And so usually he does kind of, you know, shift back to that badassery at the end.
Well, it's the same band that did the ending song that did the beginning song in ACCIÓN MUTANTE, right?
Oh.
It's like the same, they're like doing that same call and response thing in Spanish. I mean, I don't know, so I'm not sure if it's the same band, but it sounds exactly like that Mutantes theme from the beginning of the other film. Which,
wow, that's fascinating. I need to rewatch ACCIÓN MUTANTE. It has been so long since I've seen that one.
Such a scream.
I remember the very first time I saw it was actually, I ordered it out of the back of a Fangoria magazine, and I'm really dating myself here. But back when I was in high school, to get like weird shit, you would go to the back of a Fangoria magazine and there would be addresses there. And they would say like, I've got hundreds of collections, weird things you've never seen before, mail me for a Xerox copy. And so then you would like mail for a Xerox copy. And then literally I would like blind send these people my parents' checks. And then you would get like 5th generation VHS tapes back. David shaking his head. Did you do this too, David? This is how I saw all the guinea pig films that way. They came on one of the discs and there weren't even descriptions. Like half the time you were just like, I don't know what lizard with a woman's skin is, but I'm going to pay $10 for it.
Advertising Fangoria, obviously I need to see it.
Yeah. And it was the most sketchy bootleg way to ever get stuff. But for like, me and my tiny Appalachian town, it was the only way I was going to see most of these films. But
ACCIÓN MUTANTE has never been available officially in the US, right? And and it's because the pre-title sequence has 30 seconds of the Mission Impossible theme, and they never cleared it for the US because apparently it's much more expensive to clear it for the US. And so that's why it's never come out in the US, just that 30 seconds. And it's not even the da, 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 da. It's actually just like a much more kind of mellow part of the song. But that's it. It's that 30 seconds in the pre-title sequence that's kept it from coming out.
It's not like they're using 20 minutes of the movie Jaws.
Or Star Wars, which David, now that we're here, we have questions about Cruel Jaws.
I never saw it. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a reason he doesn't want to be part of that Q&A. So let's
No, I get it. Yeah, but so this one, absolute blast. And I actually kind of like the campy music at the end. For me, it made it more, it added levity to the ending before the metal kicked back in.
Well,
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to just say two quick things. I noticed in Mutantes and in this, in the first like minute of the film, you got police rolling up and beating the hell out of somebody with their nightsticks. He does it in both films and right in the beginning, because in Mutantes, they beat up a graffiti artist. I just noticed that watching it this time, and I was like, oh, he did that again.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is, you were saying before about, you're sad when the death metal dude dies. But I like to, if you watch Blade 2 and he shows up in there, I like to think that, he became a vampire and he went on living. So
Fair enough. I like it.
Nice.
They're now in the same universe.
Very
I'll take
positive
it.
outlook. Yeah.
I liked
I like
his
it.
jacket in that it just said death metal. I need that. Like, I may need that for Halloween next year.
And some of his tattoos weren't even like drawn on completely. Like some of them were just like purple lined, I noticed. So like some of the scenes, I think they didn't even like fully like detail his tattoos and stuff. Like they just did a quick, like what would be like an outline for a guy to actually do the tattoo. Just little things that you notice, but a great film. And thank you guys for hosting this. And
Thank you so much for joining
Rebekah,
us, Carlos.
800 Bullets. I gotta say, I think it's Alex de la Iglesia. I think it's one of his movies with the most heart.
Okay, I'm in.
It's got a really sweet center.
I love when horror does Western. Like, honestly, Elric and I did a whole thing, show on Fulci back in October. God, I have no sense of time anymore. It might have been a year ago. But like, in rewatching like 4 of the Apocalypse, I was immediately like, man, when horror does Western, we just fucking do it right. So I'm excited to check out 800 Bullets.
Well, thanks again, you guys. Thanks for hosting this. It's really cool.
I saw a question pop up really quick that was a read only about the use of red in the production design. And that was something that I had not paid attention to seeing it previously, but I really paid attention to now, knowing that he has a production design background. There was so much cool framing using architecture of the buildings, those stairs, when you see the girlfriend rolling down the stairs and it's using all of those different levels. The way that they were shooting the Schweppes sign, like he really gets production design and using lines and, the rule of thirds and everything like that. Like it was just really well executed.
Becca, since you were reading from the chat, there was another one from the same guy that I kind of liked. Do you think this film would work if you substitute Satan with QAnon?
That's a great question. That is a really good question. Let's see here. So QAnon is real and somebody has to join QAnon to fight QAnon.
Or is it that they think it's real and they keep stumbling into these situations that sort of self-validate, and maybe they're on LSD as well, go into a pizza, see some crazy shit happen.
So I am waiting for QAnon to start kind of making its way into our cinema in a very subversive manner. It's never going to be direct, but it's going to be kind of the growing cults and, it taking over politics. And especially now, I was talking with a friend in Australia yesterday, and I kind of naively said, I don't know if you've heard this thing that we have here going on in the States called QAnon. And he was like, honey, it's global. And then he started telling me about how QAnon is now, they have roots in Australia and France and places like that. So I have a feeling we're going to start seeing this kind of more cult vibe come into horror cinema, because we always see kind of mirroring, but never a direct hit. Like we won't have movies come out after the pandemic about a pandemic. We will have movies about isolation and being sequestered and trapped and things like that. It will be about, but not direct. So that's an interesting pitch.
I give them no oxygen. None.
We have Mike DeVito here. Mike, if you want to jump in. Hey
guys, what's going on?
Hey,
how are you?
How's it going?
Good. I'm a fellow teacher, Dr. McKendry. So
that's awesome. Elric's a professor as well, and so
yes,
I
know. Yeah, I was just about to say I discovered you guys last summer during quarantine. I had never actually listened to the podcast, but I was a member of the Facebook group, And I was like, I should start actually listening to this podcast because I love this group. And I went back to the beginning, and I'm up to episode 100
Oh my
in
God, that's
in
awesome.
Shockwaves. But I'm also currently listening to the other show. And so it's just so awesome for you to hear both of you guys as educators. It's
What do
such a
you
cool.
teach?
I teach middle school.
Oh my
I'm
God, you're
yeah, I'm
like
a middle school social
saint.
studies teacher and a resident weirdo of horror and comics and things like that. So
No, man, like middle school is, I always say like middle school teachers have to be saints. I did my student teaching in middle school, 6th grade, and they are at the weirdest age at that point because they still like are scared of everything and they're getting really self-conscious, but it's in like the stage where they, you know, they want to like each other, but they're so used to hating each other. It's like the I love you, I punch you phase. And it's just, I can't even. So
yeah, I taught high school for like 10 years, and I was like, my whole world was I'll never teach middle school. And then I got the opportunity to, and I'm like, oh my God, like I love it so much because they're like sponges. And it's so amazing how many of them are into comics and horror at that young age. I mean, I was, and so it makes perfect sense, like Stephen King and things like that. Like I discovered all those things around that age. And it's just really cool to witness it, you know, as like an outsider. You're staring out at the kids are doing their reading, and they, you know, the books pop up and you're like, oh my God, that kid's reading, you know, Dreamcatcher, and you're like, oh, I don't know if that's okay, you know, or like it, and you know, things like that. So I just wanted to say thank you for, you know, I know you guys put an education slant on things all the time, and so that's really, really cool. And I look forward to trying to jump into some of those classes. I know you talked about last time that you know, USC, the classes that you do, you don't necessarily have to be a student, maybe in the summertime or something like that. I'm definitely gonna check some of that stuff out.
Yeah, they're an absolute blast. Elric and I have even talked about doing like single classes occasionally on the Patreon. Like we're just going to do a 2-hour lecture on just Franco vampire movies or something like that. So we need to get those up and running because yeah, there's so much horror education to be had. I also recommend checking out the Miskatonic University.
I was just about to say it. I was just about to say it last night. They had the Rick Baker thing. It was amazing.
I sat in. They did Eduardo. I'm going to say his name wrong. Idiguaro. Am I saying that right?
Idiguaro Rampo.
Idiguaro. Thank you, Rampo. Last month, which I watched, and I literally added every single. I'd only seen Blind Beast at the time, and there was one other I had seen.
Malformed Man.
Malformed Man. Yeah. And after that, I added every single one, and I'm so excited to keep watching them.
I feel like I'm becoming an expert on like these Zoom type deals because I've been teaching from my living room and my office for the last year. But, you know, and teaching history, no less. I'm trying to find ways to do it multimedia and things like that. But I do find this interesting in a sense of, from an education standpoint. Elric, I'm with you. As much as I would love to be sitting in the cinema watching this movie with everybody, I do like that there's the opportunity exists, you know, like to last night to catch the LA, Miskatonic LA, like I wouldn't have access to that in New York or New Jersey, or you know, the London classes and things like that. So, you know, or even the things you guys are doing like at USC, I know that would be awesome to be there, but like I wouldn't be able to be there. So it's kind of cool. I think moving forward, I think this is going to be a big part of education. I think it'll also be a big part of the movie experience.
And just life, maybe we're opening it up a little. Like we can hybridize all these things we've been doing. Like there's a lot of negatives, but like I had people, if I call it out, I did a finals all day. So I was like working it. But one of my students, I had a 50-person Zoom screening class, which I never wanted to do it like that. And a couple of them said this is the one class that got better like this because our conversation is a lot better because we're all facing each other. In a classroom, everyone's facing the teacher. But in this setup, we're all looking at each other's faces and talking. And so I thought that was really cool. And I said, you know what, maybe we got to find a way to go into the cinema to watch the movie and then come out and go online the next day and talk, you know, things like that. So I do think there's going to be, you're right. And the events around globally will connect us in a way where we've never been connected.
Well, even like Elric and I did a couple of film festivals this year. Like I did Fantasia, which is in Montreal, and Elric, you did Sundance, right?
Yeah, and I did something else, but and
We
it's
did Night
pretty
Stream,
solid.
which was Brooklyn Horror Film Festival as well.
Yes.
And those were phenomenal. Like I've been to Fantasia in person a couple of times, and it costs a fortune. And I have to take off from work for a week and a half. And this year I did it while working in my pajamas from my RV while I was driving cross country. Like it was just this total euphoric experience.
Would
And
just
so,
be nice of both options.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because,
I think that's
you know.
moving forward. I think it's going to be a hybrid. And I think, your audience, at the live show, let's say you would have 200 people there, and then you got another 200 or 300 people that stream in. That's 500 people as opposed to 200 people. I think it can only get bigger. So I applaud you guys for doing this. I was at Bird at the Crystal Plumage last month, and I will be at anything you guys do. I wasn't able to go to Cruel Jaws because I was busy that night, but I try to make
you
time.
missed a gem. You're going to want to pick up the Blu-ray from Severin.
Yeah,
I already have it.
And you can
I already have it.
You can catch that Q&A. You can catch that discussion on YouTube.
After you watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it first.
Watch it first. It's madness.
So you guys kind of answered my question about like my original question was kind of in the vein of like what other directors would you recommend? You guys started, you said Sam Raimi and stuff like that, and I agree with all of those things that you guys mentioned, but I'm like, since I'm a big fan of the podcast, both of them, one of the big things that I love is like I literally sit there with a pen and a piece of paper and I write down these deep cuts or suggestions or things like that I go search out. And one of the movies was actually Perdita Durango. You mentioned it on a Shockwaves episode. I went and found that, and that led me, I had seen a bunch of his other movies. I had seen this, I had seen Last Circus, but that I never seen that movie. And you guys mentioned it on one of the early episodes. And so like in that sense, for the listeners of the podcast, what would be like some deep cut type recommendations that you could kind of like pair or say that are like good matches for a movie like this?
Okay,
Even
I'm
if it's
gonna
a
go
deep
left
cut.
field. I'm gonna go Science Sano. It's got the same kind of bat-shittery mixed with horror comedy. Science Sano is a bit more, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Wait, the director?
Yeah.
Of which, you're talking about, going for his filmography.
Yeah, like as a recommendation.
Got it.
Okay.
Like I think Tag is on Netflix. And that is by far, I don't like the third act of Tag, but the first two acts of it are the same kind of like, this is fucking bonkers and hilarious simultaneously. But I'm trying to think like, what are some other just wrong horror comedies?
Anything like pairing in that, I'd say if you want, we could start at the start of the next Colors of the Dark. We could like come up with a couple between now and then start with that. So as when you listen into the top of it, I mean, I think David mentioned his cameo in an Alex de Iglesias film is Alex Cox,
Oh yeah.
like in terms of
gosh.
his style, I think he's doing some of
Repo
that
Man.
similar tone. And Repo Man and Straight to Hell. And, again, he's not horror per se, he's his own subgenre, he's his own universe, but I do think, I think that's actually something we could do, because I always spend way too long thinking about these things. I'm a constant list
I tend
maker.
to be impulsive. Like immediately my brain goes to what are the horror comedies that I feel guilty laughing at? Like Man Bites Dog is one where
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
like I feel shitty. What's the one about the father and the accused pedophile who team up to find the real pedophile? Something Wolves.
The Israeli film.
Yeah. What is it? Big Bad Wolves. Thank you.
Good.
Bad Wolves, yes.
That's another one where I feel bad laughing, but I'm laughing.
Yeah, no, that was a well-made film, and those guys didn't have there hadn't been a follow-up yet by them.
That's the one with the guys in the basement, right? They have the guy
torturing the guy
Yep.
and the birthday cake and all. Yeah, it's just like a really well-made movie.
Yeah.
But it made a lot of people angry. I remember a lot of people were pissed about that movie. So
yeah.
I just wanted to tell you guys make a lot of people very happy with your material and stuff. And so I will be reaching out to you guys as in terms of education, tie-in and things like that.
Cool.
I've messaged with you guys before, but thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
Come back and talk next time. That was cool.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do 2 more live ones and then a lightning round.
Deal.
Like we did last time. So Robin, do you want to jump in?
Picture. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
We can
please.
hear you, Robin.
Cool. This is a blast. Okay, so first of all, Rebekah, you have to see 800 Ballas. It's just unbelievable. Okay, and so he came here. They showed in, I don't know if it was the Cinematheque or La Leaf. They showed Crimen Perfecto. Why did they change that name to Crimen Perfecto? Why? It was so great. It was a better title. And then they showed 800 Ballas the next year, and he came here. I can't quite remember. Anyway, he's the most adept at mixing genres that I think of anybody. And yet keeping you engaged with the characters. Everybody tries it, but nobody does it with the amount of texture and actual great production values that he does. I mean, it's amazing. So first question to Álex, our Álex. Can't you do a retrospective? Man, do an Álex, please. Okay, so then now the question for Rebekah is.
I've been bringing them as they come out, Robin. As you know.
Okay, but I'm talking about the retro ones. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. Yeah, okay, you have to get a sponsor. I got you. All right. So why do you think vampires became such a medium to convey cultural tropes?
You know, vampires, I wouldn't say that they are the only one conveying cultural tropes, but they just kind of lended itself to it. And that kind of happened gradually, I think. Like there was definitely, when we see the start of vampire, it's as like a folk story. And I mean, vampires, if we think about it, they spin out of zombies. Every culture in the world has their version of dead thing that eats living thing. And it doesn't matter where it is. Every culture had it. It's definitely like a human fear. And so vampires, zombies, they're ghouls, they're all kind of spinning out of the same place. But in the Victorian, I'd say around 1800s, we made vampires all bougie. And that's when we get like,
1% horror.
1% horror.
Rich feasting on the poor, and it's the class difference, and there's a lot of that going.
Yeah, so right there, when we made them bougie, it became a socioeconomic statement. And so as soon as Dracula comes out, it is, he is the plague traveling through. He is the rich feasting on the poor. And so right there, it became, one of our big cultural statements in horror. And then the vampire just kind of continued with that. And he stayed bougie for a long time. But then by the time we start getting into the 80s, they get this gutter pug edge. The vampires are feeding, and it's this kind of like, we're having to scrape what society will leave us. Even Martin in the 1970s had a huge amount of statement behind it. They're by no means the only one doing it. I mean, if we look at the original Frankenstein as well, which was coming out, not far from when the original Dracula book did, it's also a big statement on a bunch of stuff. But yeah, vampires, they just, because it is a literal feeding, we've always found a way to kind of insert a good statement with it.
If anyone wants a really great vampire film that I discovered this year, it's a TV movie called Vampire, where Richard Lynch plays basically a Dracula type character, and Jason Miller from The Exorcist kind of catches onto him, and it's all set around a construction site in San Francisco, and it was going to be a series like The Night Stalker, and it's really good. It's on YouTube. You can watch. It's really atmospheric, actually kind of disturbing at times. And he's, again, that kind of bougie vampire, but it's Richard Lynch, which means he's kind of unhinged and creepy as well. And I had never even heard of it. When I stumbled upon it, I was like, Jesus, this is a great little movie.
I want to shout out for Byzantium. I think that's one. And quite bougie, but it's one of the best films he's ever made, I think. And can I just?
And he did Company of the Wolves, right? So.
Yeah.
Company of the Wolves.
I think
gorgeous.
Maybe I preferred it to Company. I just thought it was more accomplished. He can be really bad too sometimes.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I want to just talk about two other. I want to make a shout out for Black Sheep. Jonathan King's film.
Oh yeah.
I have lots of friends in that film. Lots of friends. I was at the premiere of that in New Zealand.
Oh my God, it's a fabulously goofy film, and hardly anyone knows it. Then I want to talk
Bloody
about
animals.
Yeah, and when those sheep, when after he's done all the mutants, and then suddenly there's just a normal sheep on the hill, but the music is so frightening, and you're laughing because it's so scary to see just a plain sheep on the hill with the sun on it. It's just fantastic. And I also think Daniel Gruner's Marisa and Never on Sunday is a pretty interesting film. It's kind of a
What's the name of that one again?
Oh, okay. It's called Never on a Sunday, and it's Daniel Gruner. He also did All of the Witches, which is Supernatural, which I've never seen. But and he then went on to do, he came and added, but this one is kind of a comic, sexy melodrama dressed as a horror movie. So it uses horror movie tropes very stylishly, but contains a mashup of other elements. It's a really interesting film, and it's Daniel Gruner, Gruener.
I just
Okay,
wrote
from
it down.
2006 it says. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I'll look
yeah.
it up.
And then I want to say also, it's not, this is just metal comedy, but Australians and New Zealanders are great at weird comedies. So these are just two weird comedies. I want to say, by the way, that the reason this lie, I'm come from comedy. Comedy's so ghettoized. When they say comedy doesn't travel, particularly now when we're so globalized, this is the lamest excuse. The reason people don't do comedy is because they're scared of it, because they don't know if it's funny or not. So they're scared to pay for it. And you know, they're not supposed to know if it's funny. I'll tell you what happens in comedy. The structure has to be something you've seen a million times. And then the content is something you've never seen. And since producers are scared of things they've never seen, they never say yes. And then they've been using the same hackneyed excuse since the 40s. Seriously, it's the worst. Okay, and then one more thing I want to say. So these are two comedies I think are really interesting. One, I can't remember if it's called The Thunderbirds, and it's about a bunch of aging heavy metal rockers who they find out that their idol has died, and they do a road movie across Australia to crash his funeral. And it is just whack and brilliant. And the other one is sort of
2004 Thunderbirds.
I don't know. Is that Australian? I just can't remember.
I'm looking it up right now.
It sounds like about the right year. And then
no, this is definitely sci-fi with rocket ships. I'm going to assume.
This is an Australian comedy. But it's something like The Fabulous Thunderbolts, The Thunderbirds. It's weird because that title is so used. And the other one is this strange movie called The Trouble with Placid Lake. And it's sort of a Rushmore from either New Zealand or Australia. And Placid Lake.
Oh, The Rage in Placid Lake.
That's it. Yeah, and that's actually
with Ben. Yeah, it's the actress from in the Insidious movie, Rose Byrne, I think. I saw that when it came out. It was a great little
film. Really yeah. And the other weird movie that probably no one knows of, and it's nothing horrible.
We got it.
Cocoon.
You and I talk about movie recommendations to each other for hours sometimes.
Sorry.
I got to take a couple more live ones.
Sorry.
Thanks so much, Robin. Thank you. I just wrote down a couple of those recs, so I'm excited to check them out for the show.
Okay, so I know I said two more, but I actually realized that I have both David Geister and Tim Finoya. So Tim, why don't you jump in? And let me just say, just because it's starting to get a little late, try to keep your questions a little bit tight if you can, so that we can get through like several more.
Okay. Hey guys. So I think actually, Elric, you started talking about my question a little earlier for a non-conventional Christmas that just kind of happens to take place, kind of like the Shane Black effect for it, which I think, thinking about it, other than Elves, the only other thing fitting into triple feature is maybe Inside, which would be a weird...
Yeah, because it's really background event. You're right.
It'd be a very weird way to end that that night as far as holidays.
And it happens to be Christmas.
So I actually wanted to ask you guys, this one reminded me a little bit of, have you ever seen Hellbenders?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah. So Hellbenders, I remember seeing that a couple of years ago, but it's the same idea where it's that the priests have to sin constantly in order to fight demons. And that one I love because it opens with them like having sex and then punching each other. And there's a scene where they're like, I haven't done anything today. I'm going to go masturbate. Like it's just so casual. It's hilarious through the whole thing.
Yeah, it reminded me more of like this, but done through the lens of almost like a John dies at the end type comedy. But I know, Becca, seeing as you're more of the comics person, you might also like Hellbreak from Colin Bunn, who I think did Empty Man.
So Colin Bunn is
on
my
our
jam.
show. I just didn't realize it.
Yeah, Colin Bunn.
I watched Empty Man talking about it, like, who is this person? And then somebody's writing to us, you guys had him on your show like a couple months ago. I didn't know about Empty Man.
So I started stalking Colin online because I was such a huge fan of Harrow County. And then when he did Bone Parish, I was like, oh my God, I just love you. And then apparently he listened to the show. And so it was Kismet and we had him on. And but the Hellbreak, he said, if it's Colin Bunn, I'm in.
The whole thing is pretty much like Inception meets this. It's like a team of commandos and a priest, and to do an exorcism, they send them into their mind to break them out of hell.
Oh, it's like the Cell, but like
Yes, like the Cell.
like combined with Satan, and I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Satan
So
Cell,
yeah,
like-
as soon as you guys already covered the non-conventional Christmas thing, I'll refer my time back to everybody else here. So
Wow, it's like a Senate hearing.
I know.
I can see my time.
The speaker from Delaware gives his time. Thank you.
Good shirt, Sam.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, David, you're up.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, David, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. First of all, Colors of the Dark podcast, awesome. I mean, I absolutely love it. Secondly, thank you for introducing me to another movie and another director that I was totally unaware of. I used to pride myself on what I perceived was a somewhat, wide, if you will, degree of knowledge about horror movies. Nope, totally missed this one. So it was a treat.
Cool.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, could this movie be made now, or more importantly, could it be made by an American director?
And did anyone try?
Yeah, so
You know?
I believe that it could be. Would it be successful is a whole nother thing. We are in a completely different kind of political climate here.
Yeah.
And the idea of, kind of wrong.
Well, look at that. We have a really recent example. I think The Hunt. I think The Hunt's doing a lot of those things actually really well. It's a very well directed movie. Like it just, I don't know if anyone really noticed it. It didn't time well with the pandemic.
But The Hunt was like one of the best movies of the year, and I feel like no one's talking about it.
No, and it also was incredibly political, but also like political in a way where it's making fun of everyone, both sides. It didn't seem to, and that's Craig Zobel, who didn't really make movies like that either. It's kind of it was a change of pace for him, but it does show you that sometimes these things are falling into weird gaps.
So yeah, and it's hard to kind of perceive how it's going to be taken. Like I'm a big fan of Reefer Madness the musical. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Reefer Madness the musical.
Haven't seen it.
See Reefer Madness the musical. I swear to God, it is great. The movie musical is great, but it is one of those where it makes fun of everybody, and it is very pointed. And it's literally making fun of the 1950s and like our fear of reefer, but it also brings in racism and the atomic weapons and Republicans and Democrats. And it just like, it pokes at everybody. And I showed clips of it in a class a couple of years ago because I was looking at the production design of it. And a couple of my students were like, this doesn't sit well today. And they definitely were able to understand. But I mean, and it's only like 8 years old, maybe 10. And so it's different now. And so could we make something that is incredibly critical of Christianity or anything like that? Sure, you could. It's a question of getting funding for it. Is always kind of where it boils down to. Like, I really loved the movie, and granted, this is older, Saved. Do you guys remember the movie?
Yeah, I
Saved?
actually like that film.
Yes.
Mandy Moore, right?
Yeah,
Yes, well
super
done.
fun.
Yeah.
Did not perform well.
No.
And so it's kind of like you have to kind of think like, is this something you could get funding for? You could make it, and it would definitely find an audience. I mean, I am always one for subversive filmmaking and being as transgressive as you can. But that said, it's the idea of somebody has to pay for it at the end of the day, and that person is going to want to double their investment or else no dice.
Damn. So is it possible that movie was made obviously it's not an American movie, made in kind of a sweet spot, timing wise?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would say that his latest, again, coming back to 30 Coins, it's still got a lot of the same themes.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
All
I
right.
think that it's, it's in Spain, so it's a little bit different than doing something that's critical of the church or a specific religion here.
I was impressed that even went to I was so impressed HBO are putting it out in front of like American eyeballs. I thought that really elevates that show.
Europe, but
but they're bringing it here on normal HBO at least, right? Like on my normal. Yeah. And to me, that's like something they haven't done many. To be honest, I can't remember the last time I saw anything in foreign language that's not, besides the occasional movie on HBO. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's pretty great. So that's how you can be subversive, right? By getting it in front of people in the first place, you know.
But even traditionally, I mean, even if we're going back to the 70s and the 80s, we see most of kind of the more critical commentaries on the church coming out of Spain and Italy. A lot of it because like the Vatican's their next door neighbor, so they you know, kind of can be more pointed at it. But yeah, it definitely, we see a lot more historically coming out of those two countries.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
This is
Thank
really
you.
this is just so much
Got
fun.
water
I
now.
enjoyed even say, hey, that's fine.
And I just want to point out that Paula Hafley validated my love of Reefer Madness the musical and said it's so good. Now y'all have to watch
That's like
it.
bringing a friend to a knife fight. You're not allowed to.
It is literally like
Bring
one of my
Matt
best
back up.
friends, but that's okay.
That
That's
doesn't
okay.
count, Paula.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you.
So there are some there's some good questions. We can pick some out. I did want to ask this one from Dean Robbins, and maybe David, you know the answer to this. Was the Dark Zone influenced by any real Spanish shows at the time?
Sorry, what was the question?
The Dark Zone, you know, the show that he's hosted.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, I honestly don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I like that he and his girlfriend are Italian. It's sort of, that was a really interesting, this is actually how I first came to see Day of the Beast, because I think I had seen Il Postino the year before, and I was like, I absolutely need to watch more Maria Grazia Cucinotta. And so I came to it from a different avenue. But when they dub this into English, do you have any idea if that was lost on people?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't recommend the English dub at all on this film. It's just the fact that it exists meant that we had to include it on the disc. You definitely should watch it in Spanish.
I feel that way. The Rec dub is painful.
Oh yeah, no, that's what's on Amazon, right? It's
yeah,
like,
I tried
oof.
showing it to my students once, and I got midway through and was like, "Forget it, guys. We'll find another version to watch eventually." And I ended up buying the Spanish import and then bringing in an import Blu-ray player to show it in class because I could not continue with the dub. It was painful.
There's also something really nice about the accent, I find. The Madrid, and then the people in Barcelona are often they're speaking Catalan. And so there's another, I don't know, I find the Spanish language to be, pretty hypnotic. So don't watch the other ones.
I just saw Gabriel Neve, who took my horror class and is just a wonderful person, just kind of said that he's looking forward to the Andy Milligan box set. I just have to thank you for that. Because that is a filmmaker that I did not know that much about. But I feel like I need to thank you personally for bringing Sting of Death to my attention, because it's a jellyfish horror. And I knew it existed, but I had never seen it.
Oh my God, the infamous jellyfish horror. We were just
produced by Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Wait, is that the William Griffey one? Or
no, am I confusing the two?
Yeah, you are.
I am confusing the two. Thank you so much. I need to thank you for the William Griffey one. Thank you.
That's not me, that's Arrow.
Oh my God. This is what happens late at
Better
night.
cut her off now.
I'm done. It's the water. Forget it.
because no one would have thanked him for Andy Milligan. I mean, I'm just kidding. Everyone's gonna pay for that.
No,
I
wait,
was like,
what's on-
someo's thanking me for Andy Milligan.
Yeah.
The
So I'm
ghastly
gonna
one?
first say, let me do a quick. If you have not gotten the William Griffey box set, it is a joy. Sorry for the confusion. But what is on the Andy Milligan one?
Oh boy.
So Andy Milligan is we did the Dungeon of Andy Milligan is coming out next month, and it's a full box set of all the surviving Andy Milligan movies before he moved to LA. And he made movies like Torture Dungeon, The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here, Bloodthirsty Butchers, The Ghastly Ones, Carnage. So he made a lot of these absolutely no budget movies in New York and a couple of them in London. And they're kind of like, he was, how do I describe this? Kind of like John Waters level acting. And he basically got, people who would go along for the ride with him, and he decided to make horror movies. And sometimes they were made for like $5,000, and he would shoot them on.
I think you saw Flesh Pod on 42nd Street.
Flesh Pod on
I think that was
42nd
one
Street,
I might have heard from you. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think
Long time ago.
The only ones of these that I'm vaguely familiar with is Flesh Pod and Ghastly Ones.
Yeah. Well,
So I
Ghastly Ones was
apologize for
pretty
the
nasty.
confusion, guys,
So-
but I now have a deep dive weekend to do when this comes out.
Oh
I
boy,
need
if
to
you
brush up.
if you shotgun Andy Milligan movies, they'll be sayonara.
I shotgunned the William Griffey.
Yeah, but this is a
Oh,
different
it's
level of
very-
depravity.
Very different world. Okay.
Okay.
You are
Okay.
definitely gonna feel like you got smacked in the face.
That
I'm
said,
gonna
David,
need a
if
shower after
anyone
each one.
if anyone can do it, it will be her, and come out unscarred. She'll be fine. But wasn't there a great biography on him?
Yes.
It's got more
Yep.
expensive lately.
Called The Ghastly One, and
Yeah.
and yes, it's by Jimmy McDonough, and it's one of the great film books. It's one of the
Yeah.
great film biographies.
Because was it kind of mysterious, his ending? I just had this memory that
No, it wasn't that
wasn't
mysterious. I mean,
okay.
he died of AIDS and he died
Yeah.
of pauper, and it was
That's
very
right.
sad.
Okay, he died of pauper. Yeah.
Yeah. But Jimmy knew him very well in
Mm.
the last few years of his life, and so that book is about, like, Andy Milligan was a very, very angry man. And there's and we were considering the title to be like the cinema of hate, basically, about this box set, but yeah, I mean, there's no filmography quite like it.
Will there be a
Oh my
doc like
gosh.
that on the set, like a doc kind of tracing some of that, or on?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of special features. We don't have a specific long doc.
So get the book, because I think the book's still Fab Press, maybe, but
yeah, the book's still,
pricey.
yeah, it's Fab Press, and you can, I believe we've been bundling it with our box set directly on the Severin Films website.
While you're here, I want to give
it's like a doorstep of a book, it's massive.
And the reason I asked, shout out to David here, is that his Al Adamson doc is really good.
Oh my God.
It was a really great doc, and deserving. Somebody I always wanted to see more of that story, because unfortunately with anyone, the end of their life often overshadows what an amazing life they often have, and becomes just the talking point. But it was nice to see something fleshing that out. So if you haven't seen that, even if you haven't seen many Adamson films, I think it's worth seeing.
Yeah, that was another filmmaker that I admittedly had not seen hardly any of his work until I watched the documentary. And then, as part of the show, we circled back to some of them. So really good. And I know we're doing quickfire, but I just have to say, Evan McManus has asked for the Severin release of The Black Room from 1982. Elric and I love that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just talked about this 2 shows ago.
Is closer than us to
Well, Vinegar wrote to us like on Twitter or saying, and said there's rights issues, but again, we always assume that for everything good that isn't out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a reason it's not out. If it's not
always.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's if you can find The Black Room from 1982,
it's on YouTube, a decent, like,
it's
if
dark,
you're curious,
real dark on YouTube.
It's like my VHS basically ripped or something,
Yeah, but it's a wild movie if you can find it. And I see other validation for Reefer Madness the musical. Mm-hmm.
Who are these people? Is there an eject button?
Is that Paula again under a pseudonym?
We should have known.
There's a question in here that I'd love to hear more about, if anyone has any insight on this. Can anyone speak to the political climate in Spain, or what influences there might have been for the Clean Up Madrid theme?
I don't know anything about them in the 90s, really. Like, I know what happened right after Franco went. So I would assume it's probably like the reaction to the reaction. So Franco falls, and then the next wave is this new wave Spanish cinema, and everyone is doing every form of debauchery. I would imagine it's kind of like, maybe it's like a Reagan period coming in where it's clean up, but I don't know anything.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But
I mean, that would totally make sense. And we do see that kind of cyclically throughout history in a number of different countries, even like once the Hays Codes fell, I mean, shit got crazy here in the States, and it just became anything goes with exploitation filmmaking. We definitely see that pre-code where, people just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until they stepped in and were like, everything you're doing is bad. So yeah, it would make sense that became kind of, we see it in New York City. I lived in New York City in the Disney years, and apparently all the fun stuff was right before that. So,
oh yeah. There's a couple other Spanish directors just to throw names out there. We haven't mentioned Big S Luna, who we like, and we've been talking about Juan Picar Simon a lot lately.
So much
on other shows because he's so much fun. So if you haven't seen, I mean, obvious the Pieces at this point, most of the people here are probably Pieces fan. But if you're not, it's still one of the best theatrical movies I've ever seen in my life. Like seeing that the first time with no warning what it was. I think Aunt Timpson showed it like I don't know 20 years ago at an all-nighter, and it popped up right in the middle. And the ending, I'm still chuckling to this day about that movie. And there's this Slugs. Yep, you're a big fan.
Slugs.
But there's one other Spanish director. If people are just looking for Spanish director, totally different, but he made 2 films and they're both perfect, basically features, which is the his last name's Serrador. He made The House That Screamed and Who Could Kill a Child. And I think both of them are like total masterpieces of Spanish.
I would also throw Eloy de la Iglesia in that, who I mentioned in the intro. But
yeah, what are those films? The name doesn't ring a bell.
So Cannibal Man is the most famous.
Okay.
That he did, which is the video Nasty that he did. But he also did these kinky films spelled with a Q, which are kind of like these juvenile delinquent films in the 70s, which are really quite impressive.
Like Alan Clark type things or something.
Exactly, and not Alan Clark, the Larry Clark, you mean?
Yeah. Well, Alan Clark also has like the Football Hooligans and Skin.
Right, but no, these are more like junkie youth films.
Oh, okay, got it.
And Eloy, from what I understand, I mean, he got so into the subculture that he actually became a junkie himself. And these films are really like, you're actually there. They're pretty impressive movies. But Cannibal Man, and then he also made a giallo called No One Heard Scream, which is worth checking out.
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, so I mean, it's really cool to kind of dig around the riches of some of the Spanish horror, in the last 30 years. There's some really interesting stuff and tonally very different from each other.
Even recently, we've had Julia's Eyes recently, Veronica, The Skin I Live In. Like there's Shivers was a really good one that came out a
lot of those guys are from the Rec group. Like
and Time Crimes. Oh my God. Like, I don't know if that's technically a horror film, but yeah, that's Nacho Vigalounder's Time Crimes is just
great movie.
Flawless.
And what's his first name? Amenabar, who obviously made the Vanilla Sky before it was called Vanilla Sky. What is the secret? What is that? The Eyes. My God, what is the title of that original?
Open the Eyes. Open Your Eyes.
Yes, Open Your Eyes. Which is a really cool movie. Like I think it's a really smart, interesting, kind of creepy. It's much creepier than Vanilla Sky. It gets under your skin more. And
I'll also plug. What was that?
Like it's been such a vanilla movie, Vanilla Sky, like compared to the original.
Oh yeah, big time.
Like it.
No.
Also, Anguish was one, a Spanish film.
That's Biggest Luna, though, right?
That's Biggest Luna. Yeah, that movie's awesome. I mean, that movie I've never seen in a cinema, but I'm just dying to see it in a cinema because it's just so it's the ultimate self-reflexive movie within a movie. Really good movie. But so there's lots of great stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just do maybe a couple more. This is from Gabriel. He asked one of the questions earlier. But is this the movie we argue about on Twitter about whether or not it's a Christmas movie?
It is a Christmas movie.
Definitely a Christmas movie.
We see glimpses of Santa. There's a little girl in it. There's some presents. It's clear that everybody is celebrating Christmas, and the Antichrist has to be born on Christmas because it's the birthday of Jesus, and the Antichrist will always copy Jesus. So there's no debate. It's a Christmas movie. Done.
And where does this rank in Becca in your heavy metal horrors?
This has different notes than when I think traditional heavy metal horrors, I immediately think 1980s. So it's going to be Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, Trick or Treat, films like that, even up into some of the later ones. But it's got a heavy metal sentimentality to it. So I'd put it in the same vein as like Deathgasm, where heavy metal saves the day, which I've seen a couple of those come out of the 90s. So yeah.
And trends often in foreign countries are often a few years later in a lot of places. Like I know in New Zealand that was always the case when I was young. Now much less because the world's connected in this way. But like I always felt like if something was happening here, 2 years later suddenly it was happening there. So I think that maybe that could be part of why the metal side of it came in the 90s.
Yeah.
Can you guys repeat the name of the film with the other priests that were sinning?
Hellbenders. Yeah, Hellbenders.
J.T. Petty. He made
J.T. Petty, The Burrowers.
Burrowers, which is a good Western horror.
and S&M Man.
Don't know that one.
Oh, it's good.
All right, we're down to our final two. The first one, we don't see a lot of virgin sacrifices anymore. What are some of your favorites?
Hey, Bala. Oh gosh, virgin sacrifices.
I remember Udo Kier running around trying to drink the blood of virgins.
Virgins. That's
The blood of
virgin.
these whores is killing him. Well, if anyone knows Udo, it's David over there.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm bad on the spot, but yeah, I can't think of any other virgin sacrifice movies. I
Is
mean,
Satan's blood on Satan's claw a virgin?
is she a virgin?
I don't remember,
I feel like
but-
she, yeah, it's Blood on Satan's Claw virgin, Dave. You would know that one.
She doesn't act like it.
She's got great eyebrows. I wish my
Actually, no,
eyebrows
she's
did that.
she's
It's a
British, so
unibrow. Yeah.
she's a slapper. But yeah, no, I don't.
But if you all have not seen Blood on Satan's
Angel
Claw,
Blake.
it's beautiful, and the Severin release of it is just glorious. And they have a great new documentary on folk horror coming up that's screening at South by Southwest, right?
Yeah, very excited.
Oh my God.
Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched by Kayla Janice.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Can't wait to see
that is
that.
awesome. Yeah, Satanic Panic by one of Paul and mine's really good friends, Chelsea, is also, yeah, that is a virgin as well. Virgin.
Yeah, again, there's lots of those
Oh.
in the 80s too, which
Mhm.
we'd have to look it up, but there's some really fun ones. It was a fun plot device.
Okay, last one. Can we talk about witching and bitching and how it would be a good companion to Day of the Beast?
I loved Witching and Bitching. That for me, I perceived that as, okay, Álex is now going international. Like it didn't work with Perdita. Last Circus was just too batshit bonkers for him to, kind of make it over here as soon as you have like clowns with machine guns. But for me, Witching and Bitching was the one that I was hoping would kind of, be the one to push him into mainstream, especially when it came to Netflix. When it came to Netflix, I was like, this is it. He's going to blow up now. And I do think that Witching and Bitching being on Netflix gave a lot of horror fans a chance to see Álex for the first time. I know a lot of my students, that was kind of their first exposure to Álex, was Witching and Bitching on Netflix. I don't think that movie had quite the widespread appeal that I wanted it to because it was not dubbed. As much as that pains me, mass audiences hate subtitles, and it sucks, and it's a shitty thing, but it is the case.
I haven't seen it. I claim ignorance.
Are you serious?
on
You
Witching
have not
Bitching.
seen Witching and
No,
Bitching?
because you kept telling me to see it, and that's the quickest way to never see a movie when
That's
somebody keeps
brutal.
telling you.
Jesus.
No, I mean, but it happens. We all suffer this. Whenever somebody
true.
tells you too many times, you then something in your brain goes, I can never watch that movie, even though you want to see it. So
See, I need to send
not
you
her
a physical.
particularly.
I need to send you an actual physical copy because when you want me to see something like Arabeto,
Yeah.
you send it to me, and then I'm like, oh, well, I now have it here on my desk. I will watch it. So I'm just gonna send you a copy of Reefer Madness the musical, and then you will watch it.
You know how long it took me to watch The Apple.
It's
Can
true.
you mail me a VHS of Elves while you're at it?
I think I still have one actually. But somebody did post in the chat that it may be lurking on YouTube.
Yes.
So if you really
If you want to watch Elves, I got Elves. I can hook you up with Elves. I got something from the dark web. I spent Bitcoin on that shit. I went dark Elves. It comes with blood money. I'm telling you. No, actually, Dan Haggerty sent it to me, to be honest. Straight from Haggerty's files.
Well, guys, this has been a blast. We got to figure out what we want to show next week. If
Yeah,
you'll
what's
have us
next,
again.
David? We only
Yeah.
show David's movies because
Yeah.
we get 0.5 cents on the dollar.
I don't know. I can't even keep up with all the films we're releasing. So
No, yeah, you're crushing it. There's some really cool stuff coming. It is.
Oh
Really
my
cool.
gosh, yeah.
Well, I do
No,
want to talk about the Milligan stuff when we get back, when it comes back around, because it is an acquired thing, and it's something that I also want to push myself to watch more because I've only seen a couple, and they always hold me at arm's distance. So I am excited to kind of see them in
I'm intrigued. Yeah, why this has been like a blind spot for me. And so
you'll figure it out.
Oh, you're such a salesman, David.
this sounds like when what was the one I think you did the release as well, that it was the
Sinful
really
Dwarf or something.
no, it was the really bleak documentary. I think it was
Oh, Killing of
British.
America.
Killing of
That's
America.
one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember when we had you on the show and you were talking about it, and I left it going, I am so sold on that. And like a half an hour in, I was like, I don't even know why
Oh,
I
I
go
love
on
that film.
living. I just
Oh,
don't even know. It's all shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that film
we
so
do a
much.
lot of that. Yeah. Life is shit exploitation.
And the cartoon, When the Wind Blows.
Oh yeah, well, talk about life is shit exploitation, mate.
What
Oh,
am
but
I even going on?
Becca, he's balanced that with some upbeat things. Threads.
Threads for kids.
Threads, you
When
know.
the wind blows.
Yeah, exactly. Double feature. If you haven't seen Threads and we're at the end of the show, you just have to trust me. It's actually brilliant. Honestly, I think it's a brilliant movie, but I don't know if I'd watch it more than once in my lifetime. You know, once is enough to not start a nuclear war. You'll be
Just
good.
go watch Blood on Satan's Claw. It's
Yes.
uplifting.
Yeah, exactly. Just a little pick me up with Blood on
It's
Satan's
just
Claw.
fun.
Yeah.
Dark Waters is
Yeah.
an absolute trip. If you can get it in the folds of the flesh, is a hoot. Psychomania, he's got lots of fun romps.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He does. But
So-
that. Thanks for coming on, David.
Yes,
Thanks for
thank you
letting
so
us show that
much.
early because, like, I know some people think that might get in the way. I always think this stuff can only help get people talking about the movies, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's cool.
Well, now wouldn't you want to own it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
guys.
I do. I'll be
You've
fine.
got to learn about how it changed Spanish cinema. It's all there on the disc.
And please tweet, tell your friends they definitely need to pick this up. Please definitely use socials and talk about what a fun movie Day of the Beast was and how the only other way to see it is going to be Schnazzy release from Sovereign.
And me and Becca did I don't think it's up yet. We did a Patreon episode.
I just dropped it this morning.
Okay, we haven't posted, but it's out, and it is. We actually did about 2 or 3 satanic panic type movies on there. Kind of inadvertently.
You cleaned them up. They're all satanic orgies.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Actually, you know what? The guy at the start of Satan's Blood looks like the psychic in this movie. The guy who's at the start, who's explaining Satanism.
Oh, you're right.
I wonder if it's a weird tribute. I wonder now. We're gonna have to
I'm
find
sure
out.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be because that's movies talking to each other. There you go. Anyway.
Okay, well, with that, thank
guys.
you so much, Alex. This is always a blast.
Can't
Happy
wait to
orgy.
figure out what we do next time.
Yeah.
And have a great week. I hope you guys are inching towards vaccinations.
I'm hoping so too. They keep saying educators are coming up. So
There you go.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm starting to get those emails from the health
the
science.
admin, right? I got one this week and it was like everything perked up and I was like, oh my God. They were like, okay, guys, so we're getting ready to start, lines. And I was, what? So yeah.
Look after those exploitation distributors before educators. That's what I say.
We are
We-
educators. Thank you.
Exactly.
I
Well, exactly.
agree.
But let's protect them first because we need their
agree.
movies. We can't let this-
Definitely.
Actually, wait, before we go, the best film in your catalog is getting another great release, and that is Santa Sangre, which is
Yeah.
Oh
one of
my God. Yeah.
absolutely favorite movies on the planet.
Yeah.
Tell us just before you go what that's going to look like, because
Well, it's
I
going to look amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I was, frankly, I was never particularly happy with the previous Blu-ray because the director of photography took a lot of the color out of the transfer, but it was the director of photography, so I couldn't really argue with that. Well, this time Jodorowsky himself has done the color correction, and it is the vibrant version that I remember seeing in the cinema, and it looks fantastic.
such a good movie.
And he's done a new interview for us to explain, like, this is the first time he's ever seen it, and because when he directs, he's not really there, it just comes to him, the spiritual phantasmagoria that you expect from Jodorowsky when he talks about making films. So that's on there. But yeah, it's a full 4-disc set, and it looks absolutely spectacular.
Cool.
And it is the crown jewel of the Severin catalog. So I'm pretty.
When's that looking to be?
That's end of April that comes out.
Nice.
Funny that my birthday is right around there. So
I'll keep that in mind.
Becca, hint dropped.
I'll keep that in mind.
All right, sounds good. Great movie though, if you haven't seen it.
Definitely. That would be a fun one to screen.
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe that's the next one.
A
Sounds
wild one.
Yeah.
Well, until next time then, and we'll keep talking about this and I hope you guys all, I mean, we still have a lot of people watching.
I can't believe that there are this many people still watching. I assume that some of them are just asleep in front of their computer and they're going to be waking up at like 3 a.m. like, oh, it ended.
I kind of want to stay on as long as I possibly can. Everyone else can go, and I'm just going to wait it out until there's zero
We
left.
should do an all-nighter
watch them.
sometime just to
Yeah.
see how it goes. Like, just do like, you know, the New Bev used to do where we just roll movie
That's a
to
good
movie
idea.
commentary.
And
Just
an
all
all-nighter
night long.
online could be actually fun before this is over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just give it
like
a
do
shot.
pajamas and
I'm
just
not-
make it a full slumber party.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, it's been
All right.
thrown down. We're going to do a 12-hour all-nighter.
And we have a full catalog of films you can show. So.
Oh my God.
4 a.m. Sinful Dwarf.
Yeah.
It is. You're going to wake up to the Sinful Dwarf wondering what has happened in your life. to get you here.
Let's
What brought me
it's
to
a
this
good thing
point?
that my wife is wearing headphones right now before I agree to this.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Gauntlet's been
Thanks,
thrown,
guys.
guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have an awesome
All right.
weekend. Bye, everybody.
Right.